Now we know that they were doing a lot of therapies that ended up killing the people. The therapies were the ones that were actually deadly, but they were trying, you can't blame the doctors, right? They were trying their best, doing what they could. They didn't really know what to do in the beginning. That's kind of why you never want to be the first to catch an illness, right? Because then you're the one that they're experimenting on and they don't know exactly how to treat it just yet. They don't have all the information. They're putting a lot of people on ventilators, and that now they don't do that anymore. From the best of my knowledge, they don't do that anymore.
So they couldn't oxygenate. So they raised the vent settings. I'm board certified in anesthesia as part of my subspecialty certification. And so that's what happened when you're all filled with fluid. When you see the fluid on the outside, it's also on the inside. Your third spacing, it's called, you have all of this and you can't exchange. You can't get the oxygen you're breathing in into your bloodstream to deliver it to your vital organs. And so the increase in the vent settings that look like they were dangerous vent settings are the last ditch effort to save these people's lives. Now, the fact that it's payable and all that kind of hootenanny, but there's no doctor that I've been doing this. I graduated med school in 1993 that would ever do it for the money. They were trying, it was the last ditch. We can't oxygenate, we can't ventilate. Okay. Yeah. So that whole thing, and I know there's doctors on my side of the narrative, but I'm here to tell the truth. And that really does bother me. So I'm glad I was able to say that.
Yeah, I'd never heard that doctors were putting people on ventilators for money. I just thought they were doing it because they didn't know any better. They were doing the best they could. And they were like, ventilators, ventilate, ventilate, ventilate. And then it was like, oh, actually, this doesn't work. It actually makes it worse for these people.
But that's what I'm arguing. The point with you is that there's no good data that shows that it made it worse for them. Some people accused them of doing it for the money. And I know you didn't. But that narrative has not been established. And we really need to be careful when people say that ventilators kill people, because people need ventilators. And, when you're in dire straits and you don't want people to be afraid of them and decide that it was all wrong.
I think that it's not the ventilator in and of itself that's a problem. I just thought that in this particular usage case, it was not helpful. And in fact, there was stats that said it made it worse for people in this particular usage case, not in every other usage case you would use a ventilator for.
I thanks for clarifying the narrative, but no. And other people have said what I have said, which is also, no, the reason that there's negative consequences of all medical procedures. And when you have to have a high delivery of oxygen and certain vent settings, there's other negative consequences that are going to happen. But the doctors at the time are trying to just make it so that you don't die, right? Because you can't oxygenate and ventilate. Yeah. So that narrative kind of takes away from truth. And my job is to tell the truth to the best of my abilities. And I'm not perfect.
Okay. So explain to me something as you're talking about this. I guess, why didn't every doctor, when they saw a cytokine storm, because medically that a cytokine storm is your mast cells releasing histamine throughout the body, right? Is that what a cytokine storm is?
It's not always mast cells. It can come from other types of cytokine storms. So this is just one component, right?
But it's always histamine being released throughout the body, right? So why?
Well, there's other. I don't mean to interrupt you. There's other cytokine storms that are not histamine based. I just don't want to mislead. Yeah.
Okay. Well, no, it somewhat answers my question, because I'm thinking, well, okay, if you have a patient and they're having a cytokine storm, why wouldn't your first reaction to be give them an antihistamine?
Right. Because only some components of cytokine storms are histamine based. Other kinds of cytokine storms are not histamine based, right? They have other cytokines, interleukins, like this, all this stuff, right? That causes essentially where you're not intact in your body, where your interstitium expands and you have fluid in places that doesn't belong, and it causes leaky vessels, and it has all these consequences. But they should have looked at the IgE component of the cytokine storm, and they did, but they didn't know why.
So they did. So some did, or is it that the doctors didn't because they couldn't fathom that this was an allergic reaction in some way? That they were just like, well, why would it be an allergic reaction? Of course it's not. So of course it's not histamine related cytokine storm. Must be something else. I mean, is that what was going through their minds, or was it? that I'm just trying to figure out, like, especially during the COVID mania, um, it's totally believable that a lot of doctors were like, well, that would be a conspiracy theory if you think that this is some sort of an allergic reaction to something. Like, obviously not. What would have caused that? And then you say, well, the flu vaccine, a ton of flu vaccines their whole lives, and now they got COVID, and they've been taking the flu vaccine every single year, and now here they are with a histamine reaction. I mean, does that not dawn on a doctor? I'm just trying to figure out why would they dismiss it so easily in their minds during that? Why wouldn't they come to
Well,
that potential conclusion?
well, I can't speak for other doctors, but I can hypothesize a few things that I know to be the general nature of medicine. The first thing is some of them did see the histamine and did treat it, and they didn't know why. That my point is to say that this is one of the reasons why they didn't know why, but they
Okay.
treated it. They used the medicine that I advocate for. They used other antihistamines. They did. They didn't know why, and they didn't know that it could be vaccine related. The second problem is that doctors are not taught about anything related to side effects related to vaccines in med school.
Ah,
Nothing.
okay.
So you have to really read primary research and think about things and go back to basic sciences. This is 10 years of my work as a nerd coming to tell you what this is. Like, I'm not exaggerating the level of 10 years that I've worked on this on the side, because it's not there. So we're not taught anything. It's not an excuse. I'm just telling you the truth, right?
Yeah.
We're not even taught that there's adverse events. So it's not in their frame of reference. All doctors want to help people.
Hmm.
And when you're in the trenches during COVID, I can't imagine someone who hasn't been looking at this for 10 years to say, maybe it's the repeated injections, because and how would you even make that connection when you literally are just trying to save this patient's life
Right.
and you're just looking at the labs and you see the cytokine storm? But like we discussed, there's other cytokine storms that are not histamine related that you also see in COVID. It's not allergy for everybody. We don't want to misrepresent the
Sure.
truth, but we should be paying attention to it. And they saw it. That's the wild thing. And we knew that it happened in flu vaccine. But I don't know how many people read flu vaccine causes dengue-like illness article, because a lot of us don't read anything anymore. We do all these protocols and we don't read. And that's why medicine's a hot mess.
Yeah. Okay. So this all makes sense to me. Well, and the fact that they were treating it with antihistamines and then being like, and then walking away like, well, okay, like that worked, but we don't know why. We don't know why they were having a cytokine storm with histamine. It seems like that would be a natural question to ask, especially when, they were trying to figure out, well, supposedly, but they weren't really, we found out, trying to figure out, where this virus come from, what was it doing to people, what were some of the side effects to things. Of course, they weren't actually researching side effects to shots or anything else, or, they were just telling everybody to take the shot, don't worry about it. And so I guess it makes sense that nobody was asking any questions. But it doesn't make sense because that should be what the medical community and the scientific community is doing. And they haven't been. But thanks to doctors like you, there are some who are, and getting us some answers. The question now is, will the rest of the medical community listen?
Well, I think so. There's a lot of doctors that are starting to go back to what we were supposed to be, where we really look at primary research. And the biggest part of this is that we need separation of science and state. And we haven't had that. So we need a complete revamp of the medical establishment, because the science is never settled. It's never been settled. And so you have to have informed consent, and you have to have that separation.
Hey guys, thank you for watching this clip from the full Kim Iverson Show, which you could check out Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. Eastern at KimIversonShow.com. See you there.